Hello and welcome to the Field of Streams podcast for Friday, June 24th. I'm your host, Dylan Higgins, joined by my co-host, Brad Johnson. Brad, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. How about you?
Doing pretty good. Welcome back to the show. You were gone last week because you were in New York for the Fangraphs event that was going on there, but back here for another one of our live Field of Streams shows here on Friday morning. We, of course, have the chat going, the webcams going, the recording for Friday, the 24th. But Brad, tell us a little bit about that trip last weekend and that whole Fangraphs event, since we were not there.
Oh, it was a ton of fun. Working backwards at the game itself, a lot of fun if you're there. And if you're on Twitter, you got to see, Saris do a dizzy bat race and immediately fall down. I think, maybe he had imbibed a bit too much at that point. But he fell down, but the other two in the race, they immediately just merged together in a clump and barely made any progress. So they all finished at the same time, even though he had to get back up and start running wildly.
Oh boy, yeah, I saw
that. Was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun meeting the fans. There's a bunch of good people to talk with at the game. Jonah Carey was there, a bunch of other big names in the area. And then night before that was the bar meetup, and that was a lot of fun too. It was a little loud. I don't have a lot of volume with my voice, so it was a bit of a challenge to really interact at times. But it was good to meet everyone there. Met a bunch of fans, and again, a bunch of people from the industry. Some of the guys I play Dynasty Baseball with but haven't met live in New York City.
Very cool. Yeah, I went to one of those Fangraphs meetups in Seattle in January or February or so. And it was crowded, but it was definitely very fun. It was great to meet everybody, but a lot of people coming out for that kind of stuff. So cool. Very cool to hear. Yeah. Matt and I were both like, man, he kept joking that we were sad we didn't get our invite. I'm like, it's just New York's a ways away, but we could definitely go on. It'll be fun. So very cool. Well, yeah, like I said, welcome back to the show. We're going to look at DFS options for today, for Friday. And like most Fridays, there is a ton. There's a lot to go with. All 15 games are in play tonight in a big DFS slate. Brad, did you have any initial takeaways from this? Looks like pretty straightforward stack for me.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The big thing, I guess, is there are, I think it's 3 of the best hitters parks and then 4 of the best pitchers parks are in play. And there's other good hitters parks too. So there's extreme options, not so much the neutral parks tonight. It's going to give you some opportunity to go after some guys in good situations.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get into it a little bit. As usual, we start at catcher. Brad, what were we thinking at catcher for Friday?
I think the big first obvious choice, Wellington Castillo in Colorado. We can get that out of the way. He's facing a lefty. He destroys lefties. Not doing so much against righties this year, but the lefties are just dying against him. Zach Coors, there's really not too much more to that. It's just a fantastic matchup for him in general.
Yeah, he gets Tyler Anderson, who's nothing special, right?
Yeah, no, definitely just kind of maybe a league average type at C level at best, and not at C level. It's going to be pretty ugly, I'm assuming. The Diamondbacks do have enough hitters that pound lefty pitching.
Yeah, I like Castillo a lot there. That's probably my favorite name as well. Where else are you thinking if you don't want to pony up for Castillo?
If I'm looking for a cheaper guy, and there are some pricey aces that you want to think about putting in tonight, the cheaper options, going with the Cubs. Wilson Contreras is $2,500, and he's probably going to be the guy who starts. Miguel Montero is even cheaper at $2,200. He's not playing so well this year, and he's also got a knee injury going on. I don't know if he's going to be available tonight or not. I'd think about Montero just as someone who should be unpopular if he does play, but Contreras is going to be the easier pick and also very popular.
Yeah, he's done nothing but hit since he's come up, really. And that is, he's not a nobody. He's a prospect they like a lot. So I'm not, discrediting him.
He's a good hitter.
Yeah,
he's going to be a great asset for them. Obviously not a star level bat, but for the position, definitely well above average.
Yep. The Cubs are matching up against Tom Kohler, who has been pretty good against righties though this year. So I definitely like some Cubs against him. He's had a real trouble with lefties. He's also been good lately. It's an old favorite of Matt and I, but he's been he had a tough time to start the year, but 2.59 ERA, only allowed a 6.10 OPS against in his last 9 starts, but still getting hit by lefties. So, if Miguel Montero gets in there, I do like that as a cheaper option too. Any other catchers for you? Yeah. Any other catchers for you?
I do like Russell Martin a little bit up against Carlos Rodon. Martin's gotten it together lately. Game is at U.S. Cellular Field, which is a lovely park for power. And he's patient. He takes his walks. He's 3,000 on FanDuel, high floor. There's potential for a ceiling if he hits a home run. And even if he does it, it should reach base once or twice.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a plenty of runs scored by Toronto today. I like Rodon, but he does have that weakness against righties, and that's just a tough matchup for him.
He's very volatile. It's hard to predict what's going to happen. You go with a stack against him, it's the day he throws 8 innings, like 12 strikeouts or something.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm trusting him to pick him, but yeah,
no,
there's Blue Jay ups in there, and Martin's showing signs of life, so I like that. I wrote. Do you like Stephen Vogt getting Jared Weaver at all?
Yeah, I like most people against Jared Weaver. He's the Jamie Moyer of the day, and that's somebody you can go after in any matchup. Obviously, he'll have his days when he's fine, but rarely is he going to be so good that you can't use at least 1 or 2 guys there.
Right. There's some A's. It's hard to pick from the A's. The thing about Jared Weaver last time out, went to Oakland through the first Maddox of the season. It was incredible. And he gets Oakland again, this time at home. I really don't think he's going to do that again, but it's at least, he had 1 strikeout, given up plenty of contact. I'm at least thinking twice, but I like Stephen Vogt. I trust him at catcher. I think that's an okay matchup for him. Only other names I had, Derek Norris gets Cody Reed, left-hander for the Reds. I like a lot of Padres when they get lefties, actually. I mean, they're a real bad offense against righties, but there's a bunch of guys against lefties. Derek Norris is having a bad year, but still has that skill to hit lefties a little bit. So I would consider that small Padre stack. And then would you consider Brian McCann getting Tommy Milone? Brian McCann's been a little cold lately and isn't great against lefties, but Tommy Milone has a 5.79 ERA, pardon me. Don't think he's going to go deep. Would you consider trying to fade there with Brian McCann?
Yeah, I like that as a not popular pick. You mentioned he's probably not someone, even though Malone's bad, I wouldn't expect McCann to really do much against him. But the Twins bullpen's pretty bad, and I could see McCann getting at least 2 plate appearances against that.
Yeah.
It's a good bit of a fade.
Yeah. Any other catchers for you?
I think that about covers it. There wasn't a lot of clear wins in the catcher column for me.
Yeah. I think Castillo was the one with the exclamation point, and otherwise might be going cheap. What are you thinking at first base? Where do you think you're probably going to go?
I'll knock out 3 big names right off the top. Paul Goldschmidt in Colorado. That's a given. If you have the money for it, go ahead and do it. Edwin Encarnacion up against Carlos Rodon. Encarnacion's hitting well lately. A lot of power. And, he does this. He did it last year. He's cold for a while, and then he just picked up and finished the year right where we expect him to be. And he's doing that again. And then really like David Ortiz tonight, too.
Yeah, I think those are the big 3 names. He gets Nick Martinez, and that's a big fat green light there. I think he should do just fine. Yeah. I was thinking the other name I really like. Again, I said Tom Kohler's been pretty good, but has that weakness against lefties. So I think that Anthony Rizzo. It's Miami. It's not really where you want to take him, but he's a good enough hitter. I totally trust that. It's not quite as shiny as Ortiz, Encarnacion, or Goldschmidt, but I like that. And then the other big name I wrote down, Miguel Cabrera has been killing righties this year, and Danny Salazar has had a little bit of that reverse weakness, been having more trouble with righties than lefties. Danny Salazar has just been awesome in general, though, so it's not really a big weakness to exploit or anything. But if you want to go somewhere a little less popular, that is on paper a good matchup for him, kind of. I suppose. That's, again, more of a fade, trying to be sneaky, looking for a little bit of value there. But I don't feel super comfortable picking against Salazar in general. What about cheaper first base options? Where do you think you might go?
I got 2 names on the cheaper side. Well, I guess we can go with 3. The third one would be John Jaso, our standard high floor, low ceiling guy.
Yeah.
Another high floor type, Joe Mauer, up against Masahiro Tanaka. The matchup's not great, but we're talking about Yankee Stadium. Mauer's got an over 400 OBP versus righties this year. And so you're looking at a high floor, potentially high ceiling game. He has enough power to get out of Yankee Stadium. It's not like he's not hitting for any home runs. It's just a matter of getting under the ball, which I wouldn't really bet on against Tanaka, but maybe one of the relievers if they happen to do some damage early.
Sure.
The other guy I like is Logan Morrison, who was the worst hitter in baseball, and then for a little bit he was the best hitter in baseball, and now he's looking pretty bad again. But the game is in Baltimore. Great park for left-handed power, up against Giovanni Gallardo, who I think is pretty damn exploitable when it comes down to it. So if you want to hope that he can channel some of that hot hitting, not a bad day to do so.
Yeah, against Giovanni Gallardo, could see him doing all right there. I don't mind that. He's inconsistent, but there are skills there. The only name I have left that we didn't discuss is Will Myers getting Cody Reed again, another Padre who is able to hit lefties. And so, again, I don't think Padres are very popular, but getting a lefty, there's damage they can do there, and he's been good. So I definitely like Will Myers as an option. All right, on to second base, I had 5 names written down. How'd you do? What's your list look like?
There's some options, but not a lot of cheap guys.
I started with, if you want to go expensive, Robinson Cano, getting Carlos Martinez, who has that split against lefties. Carlos Martinez is a decent pitcher, but has trouble with lefties and has for a long time. So I think you can go there without hesitation. Same with Dustin Pedroia getting Nick Martinez, and the past has pounded on lefties. This year, hitting the ball real well against righties. And I'm not scared of Nick Martinez at all, are you?
No, not at all. It's definitely one of the guys you can go after with no hesitation. I guess my only concern is that the Red Sox should be pretty popular tonight.
Yeah, but for good reason. Scoring a bunch, he's up near the top of that lineup. I like Dustin Pedroia a lot. What else are you thinking at second base?
Staying with the expensive guys, I like Matt Carpenter up against Wade LeBlanc. It's a lefty on lefty, which when the matchup's right, I like going after. And I think this is one of those situations where LeBlanc being a lefty is going to scare people off Carpenter, and it really shouldn't hurt his projections that much.
Yeah. I was telling you before we started the show that I was really excited to see Wade LeBlanc's name on the slate because just a throwback for me, I worked at the AAA level in 2009 was my first job in baseball, and he was our ace at AAA Portland there, essentially. And even then, 7 years ago or so, he was pretty much a quad A pitcher where he would go up and pitch for the Padres a bit and couldn't quite hang in the rotation, then come down and be good at AAA. And he's been doing that for about 7 years, where he pitches pretty well at AAA and then can't hang in the major leagues. Just the definition of a journeyman. So seeing his name pop up on my list here in 2016, it's like, oh yeah, that guy. I remember that. You know, he definitely can compile some innings, but also a guy you can definitely pick against. And so going sneaky with Carpenter, I think it's not a bad idea at all. I wrote down Jed Jerko. I don't know if he's going to get in there. He hasn't played in like a week. They kind of solidified that infield. I don't know if there's room for him, but they do like to use him against lefties when they do. So I don't know that he for sure plays, but if he does, there's sneaky power there. He likes to hit lefties, and I would consider that. But I like Carpenter too. I agree. I'm not scared of him against a lefty, especially a modest one like that. What else do you like at second base?
In the mid-range, Neil Walker's probably the guy who stands out to me up against the Braves tonight. That's a good matchup for him. And the Braves, there's not too much to worry about with Aaron Blair. He's got a 7-point-something ERA.
Yeah.
He really doesn't look like a major league pitcher to me. I know scouting reports read better than what he's shown, but what I've seen with my own eyes does not look good.
I was hoping for a little more from him. They were always thinking he was going to be kind of a decent floor, like third starter or so, and he still may be, but so far
still plenty of time to get it together.
It's just hasn't shown it yet though. Would you consider Ben Zobrist getting Tom Kohler? I know it's Miami, but again,
absolutely.
Yeah, Tom Kohler has been good, but struggles with lefties this year. So Zobrist could do that as a switch hitter. And then I have Starlin Castro getting Tommy Milone. Starlin Castro has been, I'll say, viable against lefties this year. Not a stud. He's having not a great year, but can hit lefties. It's Yankee Stadium. Tommy Milone's bad. I trust that as a second base option. Were there any more for you?
The last one that stood out to me was Logan Forsythe up against Gallardo. Mm-hmm. He's pretty cheap on FanDuel at 2,800 and leads off, so it's a good situation for him.
Yeah, that's totally a place to go. All right, how about third base? Where do you think you're getting started?
Again, a lot of options. There's at the top end, you have your standard stuff. Chris Bryant at Kohler, Nolan Arenado up against the Diamondbacks tonight. I see Josh Dawes has a day-to-day next to him, so let me see what's going on with that. He's battling a stiff neck, it says. But
if he gets in, he gets. So if he gets in, he gets Carlos Rodon.
Yeah, Carlos Rodon. That one's a great matchup at U.S. Cellular Field. Going beyond the top plays, 2,900 on FanDuel. Anthony Rendon's up against Zach Davies. And Davies has pitched pretty well lately. If you kind of dig into the peripherals a bit, I think his ERAs over like last few starts is like a 1 point something, and peripherals are more mid threes. He's an average pitcher, and that's fine. Pitching at Miller Park, though, Rendon's got a chance for some power. Has a chance for some run production, and it's a good lineup around him, so there's a potential that Davies has a rough night. It's more taking advantage of the price that he has, too, which is 2,900 in FanDuel.
I like Rendon as a hitter more than most people. Zach Davies, we also like a lot on the show. Matt and I have been on him lately. He had a tough start to the year. In his last 5 starts, 1.34 ERA. And then going back to his last 9 starts, 2.40 ERA. So he's been pitching really, really well, relatively quietly, especially at Milwaukee. But I agree, he's definitely more of a 3 ERAs pitcher. I don't think this is some hidden ace, but he's just on a hot streak now. But yeah, I like Rendon. I think there are some Nationals guys you can use against him, but I'm also a little intrigued by him. Who else are you thinking at third base?
My cheap option, 2,600 on FanDuel, Yangervis Solarte.
I love that.
Cincinnati. Great park for power. And he's not really a power hitter, but he has enough pop to get out of that park. Mm-hmm. And you got a good situation. He bats cleanup. He's up against Cody Reed, who's someone I like today as a GPP play. He's very high risk, high reward. If the Padres do get to him, Solarte will probably be a big part of that. And he's also a high floor guy, good walk rate, low strikeout rate. Yeah,
and he's also just been crushing lefties this year. He's super veteran righties, and he's really doing that this year. And again, I think there's a mini Padres stack there to go with. I don't know if they're necessarily going to hit Cody Reed, but there are options, and he's a big part of that for me. So I could see myself going there.
And there's that Reds bullpen too. You know, he pitches 6 good innings, lets up 1 or 2 runs, still 3 innings of that bullpen.
So I never really pick Padres against righties, but they are on my list against lefties for sure. I have Nick Castellanos getting Danny Salazar again, another Tigers guy who has been better against righties than lefties. It's purely a fade. I'm not super confident about that one. I just don't think many people do it, and it's not as bad as it looks. That's the best I can say about it. Is that you'd be scared of going against Salazar, and I think you'll need to be a little bit scared, but still not juicy. And then the only other name I had at third base you didn't mention is Adrian Beltre getting David Price. Same kind of thing where the situation's good, but it's still a really tough pitcher to pick against. So that's a GPP play. That's a fade if you want to pick Beltre against a lefty. But I don't really feel comfortable going against David Price in general. Any other third baseman for you?
That covers it for me.
Okay. On the shortstop, I actually had a bunch of shortstop names today, which is not always the case. It can be kind of tough. Trevor Story at home getting Archie Bradley. That's, one of those obvious ones at the top of the list. It's totally fine. Corey Seager going to Pittsburgh. Not a great park for hitting, but it's Jameson Taillon, who I believe a bit, but I think I believe Corey Seager more. Are you to the point where you can trust him in most matchups?
Yeah, I definitely believe him more. The bigger concern for me, it being PNC Park, is going to be a little hard for him to hit home run. Mm-hmm. And Taillon did have that near no-hitter 2 starts ago.
It's definitely talented.
There's a ceiling there. There's risk with going with the Dodgers stack, for example, but I could definitely see going with Seager by himself.
Yeah, Corey Seager is almost the Dodgers hitter I trust the most. He's all of a sudden kind of
right now
pretty much cemented himself. I wrote Brandon Crawford getting Zach Eflin. Are you hesitating picking against Zach Eflin at all?
No, there's no real hesitation from me on that one. Eflin's an interesting guy. Something I noted before his first start, pictures of his profile, command and control, a little bit of a sinker type approach. Usually have trouble the first time they touch the majors. Takes some adjustments because they're used to working in the zone, and the majors you have to also figure out how to work out of the zone without falling behind in the count. Mm-hmm. It's kind of tricky, and so it takes some time to learn. And so you get bumps in the road, and I think Eflin's going to be going through those.
Yeah, he has so far. So I'd consider Brandon Crawford. I wrote Carlos Correa getting Edinson Volquez. I think that's totally fine. He's hitting righties more than lefties this year, and Edinson Volquez doesn't intimidate me. So those are the studs for me. If you want to go a little cheaper, I guess you can mention Francisco Lindor and Jordan Zimmermann too. Not juicy, but I trust him as a hitter to be okay there. And Zimmerman's cooled off a bit. But if you want to go deeper, I don't know if this guy counts as deep anymore, but the matchup doesn't seem great. Jonathan Villar gets Max Scherzer, and I think most people will say, no way, don't want to pick against Max Scherzer, and he could definitely have a big day. But as great as Max Scherzer's been this year, he's allowed an 821 OPS to left-handed batters. He gives up homers, and he's getting whacked by lefties. And Villar is a switch hitter, so he can find himself in that platoon advantage. I would at least consider it. Typically not picking against Scherzer, and I don't know how much help he's going to get from a pretty right-handed Brewers lineup. But I like Jonathan Villar. He can run. He can make his own points there, even if he doesn't get much help. Again, Scherzer, big weakness from lefties. That's probably the only Brewers hitter I'm going to consider. But do you think I'm crazy to consider Villar there with that weakness?
It's not crazy. It's certainly not a straight normal pick. Mm-hmm. But if you're trying to look for a way to get something that should be unpopular with a ceiling and a floor, he's more of a high OBP guy right now. Mm-hmm. He's certainly worth a look. Should be pretty much on your own if you go that direction. And I don't hate the matchup, honestly, even though it's Scherzer.
Yeah, I just can't believe that Scherzer has been hit that hard by lefties because he's absolutely dominated righties, to have the numbers that he's had. But yeah, if you look a bit, that's definitely a thing for him this year. Where are you thinking at shortstop?
I'm looking right at Xander Bogaerts up against Nick Martinez. That one's got my full attention. And then also like Aledmys Diaz up against Wade LeBlanc. Platoon advantage, and he often bats up in the order against lefties and righties.
Diaz has been bad against lefties this year, but he definitely hit them in the minor leagues, and I think he's going to get better.
And it's Wade LeBlanc so much right now.
Yeah, I'm not either. I'm kind of like, I think he's going to be just fine, for sure. Other shortstop, I only had looks. I wrote Johnny Peralta getting Wade LeBlanc also, even though he's probably maybe more of a third base option. He hasn't hit lefties much this year, but I think that he could be. I think he'll be fine. That's another one where it's small sample. I'm not worried about what the splits look like right now. Cardinals in Seattle are going to be just fine. And then my last name, I mentioned him the other day when we had Padres against the lefty again. Alex Ramirez has like a 750 OPS against lefties this year or something, and he's not exciting. He's not thrilling by any means, but when he gets lefties, he's competent. I think as competent is the word I will use for this Alexi Ramirez matchup. So I consider him if you're just looking for a real cheap shortstop. I think Alexi Ramirez could get you some points. Any other shortstops for you?
Well, speaking of cheap guys, you reminded me of Nick Ahmed. Guy can kind of hit lefties. He's got like a 400 slugging percentage and a sub 300 OBP. So not ideal, but games at Coors, and he can kind of hit lefties. So good cheap option.
Yeah, CJ in our chat right now said that he's been on the Diamondbacks the last few days and asks if they're due because he's been underwhelmed the last few days. I don't know that you and I believe in the concept of being due, but I think that it's definitely a good matchup for a lot of them. And so that's good that you bring up Nick Ahmed. Because, we've talked about him in the past on the show. Just definitely a glove first shortstop, definitely bats low in the order, not a real exciting batter. But when he's hit, it's been lefties. And it's Coors Field, and things can happen for sure. And I think runs are going to be scored anyway. So not only does he have a chance to hit, but has a chance to hit with guys on base when he comes up. So it kind of like Alexi Ramirez. If there's a time for him to be intriguing, it would be here. And it's shortstop, and I think shortstop and catcher are the places you can go real cheap and still get a return. All right, on to the outfield. Brad, what sticks out to you in the outfield?
Well, we could probably knock down this Coors game. Carlos Gonzalez and Charlie Blackmon up against Archie Bradley. Yes, please. I'll take it. And then other side, cheaper guys for Diamondbacks. Yasmani Tomas isn't terribly cheap, but Ricky Weeks is usually cheap. He's their cleanup hitter against lefties. Great situation to get him. I think he's 3,000 on FanDuel. I didn't check him on DraftKings. And then getting in the lineup lately, Peter O'Brien. A lot of power, a lot of whiffs. Definitely a high ceiling, very low floor pick. But if he gets into one or two, he could put up a really big night.
Yeah, he was crushing the ball at AAA. Has crazy power, undeniable power, and you get to the major leagues and the ball moves a little bit harder, and the breaking stuff can be tougher. But then if you go to Coors Field, it doesn't break so hard. Maybe it might be a little bit easier to hit. Against one Pacific Coast League, the Coors Field might look. It's still major league pitchers. But, I like that actually. I like O'Brien there, and Tomas and Weeks. I like all those D-backs guys. Is less popular, but definitely viable options here. So I think we like some D-backs. Who else are you thinking in the outfield?
A couple of Red Sox, Mookie Betts and Jackie Bradley Jr. Probably stay away from Rusney Castillo or whoever else gets put in the outfield, but those two looking good.
They've been playing Chris Young, who...
Chris Young just hurt himself, though. So
did he?
Yeah, he's on the DL, I think, even.
Oh, boy. I missed that. That's too bad, because he had been doing pretty okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was.
Been doing okay.
No more.
Yeah, who knows if they're going to play out there. But, yeah, definitely Jackie Bradley and Mookie Betts, green light there. One of my favorites is Lorenzo Cain getting Dallas Keuchel, and it pains me to pick against Dallas Keuchel. But Lorenzo Cain, last I looked, had an OPS over 1,000 against lefties, and Dallas Keuchel has allowed an even 800 OPS to right-handed batters. And that is a good numbers to add up together. Just a really good matchup for Lorenzo Cain. Again, it's sad to see Keuchel struggling this hard, but I think you can pick against him with guys who hit lefties like that. So I'm going there. That's the Royals hitter I really like in this matchup. I also wrote Carlos Beltran getting Tommy Milone. I think you can pick a couple of Yankees guys, but that's the Yankees outfielder hitting lefties the best. He's been doing pretty good this year, and he's been doing especially good against lefties. So I'm definitely considering that one. And then my Padres guys for sure. Matt Kemp, who has one of my favorite batting lines this year, getting lefties. He's finally drawn a couple walks, but he's just pounding the ball. And he gets Cody Reed. And Melvin Upton Jr. has also been hitting lefties. He's turned that on a little bit more. So again, that Padres stack, there are some sneaky guys there that you can go with. That's my favorite sneaky place to go today. Diamondbacks stuff a little more obvious, but I like that too. What else are you thinking in the outfield?
Adam Duvall doesn't stop hitting home runs.
No.
It's Colin Ray. That's a fine matchup. No OBP still. He just doesn't reach base very often. It's a home run or bust. So definitely high risk, high reward type play. But he's tied with the league lead, so it's
so
not
crazy.
a bad place to go.
It is so crazy.
Speaking of that profile, Mark Trumbo up against Matt Moore. Speaking of league leaders in home runs, he's also tied. Bryce Harper his price has come down enough to be quite affordable. There was an article on Fangraphs the other day about how he's just not hitting any pitches on the upper half. I still feel like he could probably get to Zach Davies, even if Davies is following the scouting report. Harper being who he is, and having that nice Miller Park to work into. So he might have been a bargain long enough for people to stop using him too.
Yeah.
We'll see how that one works out, but it's always hard when these stars are kind of slumpy, and with Harper, it's not like as bad as McCutchen or Stanton where they're just not doing anything. He's still doing some work. He's still getting
roller coaster of league adjusts to him, and then he's going to adjust back. I mean, he has crazy talent. We're not worried about him. He's going to be fine. Just having some issues right now. But I mean, as long as the price is reasonable, he every day could hit 2 or 3 home runs. It's not like I'm worried that he all of a sudden doesn't have it. So that has as high a ceiling as most people. So I think any day you can afford him, that's definitely an option. Do you like Gregory Polanco getting Nick Tepesh?
Yes, that was the next guy on my list.
Yeah.
Definitely love Polanco this year. It's been refreshing to see the breakout.
I like Tate too, but I know he's hurt. I saw that. He's been out for a few days, but would have been an option there, but can't use him. I also wrote down Mike Trout getting Eric Surkamp. I mean, Mike Trout's an option most days, but now's a day where I might actually spend the money in this matchup. Usually it's tough to justify, but I like that. And then the last 2 outfield names I had, Stephen Piscotty getting Wade LeBlanc. He's also murdering lefties. So when he gets in for the Cardinals, he'll be in the heart of that order and just shows even more power against lefties. Always hits for a decent average, but like that a lot. And then I wrote Odubel Herrera getting Jake Peavy. He's the Phillies hitter I tend to trust most. I don't know how many runs they'll score, but Jake Peavy's pretty exploitable. You could see him doing okay. Any other outfielders for you?
I like Billy Hamilton today, and there's a bit of explanation behind that. First the situation, he bats second in the Reds lineup. I don't see any reason why they can't get to Colin Ray today. Not really looking for power, but the Padres are one of the most run-upon teams in baseball, and Hamilton gets on base, he's going to steal. Don't know if he'll get caught or not, but he's going to try to take a base, if not 2 or 3. So could be a nice day for Hamilton. He's very cheap on FanDuel. I think he's just $2,500 there. I'm looking at him on DraftKings now where he's $3,800, a little less affordable.
But he's going to run on Derek Norris, you think?
Yeah, probably. And because it's a righty, he'll be able to run on Colin Ray too.
Sure. Yeah, I like that. That's a good option. Any others for you before we get onto the pitchers?
Not a lot jumping off the page, really. There's always guys you can turn to if you want to dig deeper. And you know where to find us on Twitter if you want to talk about them.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, we get plenty of DFS questions, and we never mind. It's good to talk baseball. On the pitching side, Masahiro Tanaka getting the Twins. I know he hasn't been amazing this year, but I fully trust him in that matchup, don't you?
Yeah, Twins matchup isn't bad for him. And the concern I seem to have with him every time I try to convince myself to use him is that he's not really getting to that point where the outings are fantastic. Now, his good outings are good. And I only play GPPs. If you're playing cash games, okay, good outings, great. You can make a lot of money just playing good outings every day. But if you're playing GPP, you're trying to get a guy who, 1, has one of the best outings of the day, and 2, isn't super popular at the same time. So that's a bit of a challenging job. Tanaka is usually not someone who fits into either of those buckets.
Well, he only has 68 strikeouts in 92 and 2/3 innings this year. You're like, where did the Ks go? And the control looks
and as a splitter pitcher, the Twins do have enough lefties that when you hang a splitter, it goes out of the park. That's just how the pitch works. So if he hangs a splitter to a lefty, it's going to be a home run.
Yeah. He's been good. I think he'll have a good outing. 2.91 ERA on the year, the 1.0 WHIP. Like, he's a good pitcher, but these are the strikeout totals going back in the game log: 5, 4, 3, 2, 4, 4, right. And then finally on May 15th he had 7. Like, there's just not that huge ceiling. Like, you want a guy that can potentially hit double-digit strikeouts.
We've poo-pooed him a bit, but remember, Tanner Roark, 15 strikeouts against the Twins.
I will never forget that Tanner Roark struck out 15 Twins. I mentioned the other day that the new one for me, and that for me was just a huge comment on the Twins. I agree. The one for me the other day was Jared Weaver throwing the Maddox against the A's. It just made me go, oh my goodness, the A's are broken. Something's wrong there. And
that's just how their offense works. It's very hit or miss.
Yeah.
There's definitely been games where I've watched them against a bad pitcher. Like, I picked a stack of them. It's like some sort of lefty that they should kill, and they just make a bunch of easy outs. So So I mentioned earlier they get Weaver again. Are you considering trying to strike gold twice there with Jared Weaver against the? He only had 1 strikeout in his Maddox. Like, even when he pitched an incredible game, the best game he's going to pitch all year, the ceiling's not that high. Let me look to see how much he costs on DraftKings, because I could maybe see using him as your second pitcher there.
But it's, again, even when you got a really good outing from him, it was not that great of an outing. I mean, plenty of points. You'll take the shutout any day, but 1 strikeout. I'm just like, there's talk about no real ceiling there.
So my qualm with the DraftKings option, he's 6,400 there, which... yeah, I think that works if you want to try to use Scherzer and also like course hitters or something. I would rather find $500 more and use Jake Peavy against the Phillies.
Okay, sure. A little more upside, at least in case there.
Yeah, and he's actually pitched well lately. His last 5 starts, he's got a really good ERA. I don't have it in front of me. It's like maybe a 2-something or even a 1-something. There's a little bit of BABIP luck involved, but mostly just looks like he's gotten himself under control a bit, hitting his spots better. And of course, that Phillies lineup, terrible. It's worse in baseball right now. The Braves have now surpassed them, and then games at AT&T Park too.
Oh boy, I didn't know that they had been passed by the Braves. That's tough.
I don't know if the season stats have officially surpassed them, but just the way the teams are running right now.
Depending on how you split it.
Definitely, the Braves are featuring a merely bad offense these days.
Yeah. So we mentioned Max Scherzer. He goes to Milwaukee. He has that bad split against lefties. They're mostly right-handed lineup. You're not hesitating there, really, are you? If you want to find money for him.
No, definitely a very attractive matchup for him. The only concern is that being on the road at Miller Park, road game's always a slight hit to your chance to win, and by extension, number of innings pitched too. So there's statistical averages to consider, but Scherzer could also throw a complete game here.
Yeah, and he does have that ceiling that we haven't seen from Tanaka, where every once in a while, Max Scherzer all of a sudden 15 strikeouts out of nowhere. Like, he has that in him. Definitely not banking on it.
He had the 20 strikeout game, tied the major league record.
Exactly. It's like, you know what? It's there. You can envision it. If you're going to spend that money in GPP, which is hard to do, that at least exists. What are you doing with Danny Salazar opposite Jordan Zimmermann? I mean, Salazar is definitely good, but he gets the Tigers, and Zimmerman's been okay. Can you do anything with that matchup?
That's a tough matchup. I would consider using it only because I would expect a lot of people to walk away from it. That's the only reason I'd use it. There's definitely an expectation of the Tigers scoring some runs because they just have a lot of thump in that lineup. There's a lot of ways they can get to you. They can string together hits. They can go deep. They can just wear you out, and Salazar could have one of his 4 walk games. There's a lot of ways for him to get at you.
Yeah, and Danny Salazar this year, 2.23 ERA. He's been awesome. He's striking everybody out, like not taking anything away from Danny Salazar. But he has been worse against righties than lefties. He's been dominating lefties. And, you know, it's such a right-handed Tigers lineup that it's not a great matchup for him. Could see the good, could see the bad, you know, but it's not on paper a very good matchup for him. So what are your favorite pitching ones that we haven't discussed so far? Where do you think you might go in DFS for pitchers today?
I really like Kyle Hendricks these days. He's basically pretty similar to a good version of Dallas Keuchel is the comp I've seen, and I don't disagree with it. He's looking very nice this year. 12 strikeouts in his latest outing. Usually keeps the runs to a minimum. Can work deep into a game, so he does have that ceiling where he could supply a lot of points. Not as consistent with those points as a Scherzer or a Salazar, but definitely has the potential to be up there with the top pitchers. Costs more of a second tier type price. So definitely someone I like a lot against the Marlins today.
Yeah, I like that too. I want to mention Tom Kohler again, 2.59 ERA in his past 9 starts, only allowed a 6.10 OPS. He's a guy who's been pretty decent in the past, but he gets the Cubs. I mean, can you?
Yeah. It's not a bad fade. You know, the Cubs have their games where they score 1 run, and
yeah,
it seems to be when I try to stream them. I haven't, or not stream, stack. I don't have a stack of Cubs today, so I think they'll do all right.
Yeah, that is a fade I would consider. Not with a ton of confidence, but I guess that's why it's a fade. Are you considering Jameson Taillon in at home against the Dodgers?
Yeah, he's a high-risk, high-reward play. He had that good game against the Mets the second time he faced them. I'm not too thrilled with him at this point. I don't see a huge fantasy ceiling. He strikes me a little bit as a Marcus Stroman type, where he can work deep into a game. They're obviously managing his innings, so they're going to be reluctant even to allow that. But he can work deep into a game. He's not going to get a ton of strikeouts, but he should command the zone, not walk too many guys.
Yeah. I'm interested there for sure. Steven Matz going to Atlanta. Any hesitation there at all?
Yes, because the Mets are concerned about his health. The quote it's been floating around is they're going to be cautious and watching him closely tonight. So there's a chance that you get a situation where they don't like what they see in the 4th inning. They yank him out. He's very expensive. If it wasn't a matter of worrying about him getting pulled, the Braves matchup is fantastic for him. I'd love to use him. But just I don't want to pay so much and then find out that he's gone in the 4th inning and it was semi-predictable. Yeah,
bust potential. How about Aaron Sanchez going to the White Sox? They've looked pretty inconsistent, I would say, also.
Yeah.
Are you considering taking him there?
It's another game where, I'd consider it. Probably like it more than Danny Salazar matchup-wise. But you are working with a very friendly hitter's park. He's on the road, so that can sometimes eat into routines. And again, that does hurt your win percentage slightly. So there's a few negatives there, but I would definitely think about using him. Shouldn't be the most popular pitcher on the high end, and still very high ceiling.
All right. I got 2 more names for you, at least on my pitcher list. I'm considering Zach Davies. We talked about him again, 1.34 ERA in his past 5 starts, 2.40 in his past 9. He's been good. We don't think he's this good, but he's good enough to use right now. He's only 47% in Yahoo leagues. That means Matt and I are both in on him in our Field of Streams pick for Friday. It's kind of boring when we agree, but he's just under-owned. There's no way he should only be that owned. You got to go there. And the Nationals can definitely hit, but it's not a lineup I'm necessarily running away from. He's been good enough to at least take it there. I don't know how much support he'll get against Scherzer, but again, 47% owned, right on that line of 50 for us. We're both going there. I'm considering it in DFS too. Again, he's been good enough, and I don't think he'll have crazy ownership. So I'm considering that. And then the last name that I feel we at least need to talk about, David Price going to Texas. Are you worried about him getting the Rangers?
Not worried. It's a tough park to pitch in, though, and Price has been homer prone at times this year. So there's, in fact, looking back at his last 10 games, not last 10, last 6, it looks like, homer or more in every one of them.
I count 7. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's pitched deep in most of them. Like his last 3 or 8 innings, that he's allowed a total of 5 home runs.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag. Like those are good outings, but he's also, if some runners get on base for those home runs, it could turn to a bad outing pretty quick.
He's been doing the Josh Tomlin thing where he's getting his strikeouts. He's not walking anybody. The ERA looks good, but just at least a homer every game. It's like he has to check the box, it feels like. He has to give up 1. But so, yeah, I don't know that he's going to put up a 0 in Texas, but I think he's good enough to at least be an option and have a good outing. Are there any pitchers for you that we didn't mention?
We kind of touched about Cody Reed a little bit earlier, and he is someone I like as a high-risk, high-reward type. He can get more than a strikeout per inning. He can work semi-deep into a game if he's really running. It's his second major league start. He gave up a couple home runs in the first one. There's a chance he's going to be homer prone in this first look in the majors, and it's a tough park to work in. So there's upside, and we mentioned the Padres can hit lefties. That's the other thing to consider. Even if Reed does have a really good game, he might not be in line for the win, which hurts his positioning on FanDuel.
Yeah, I could see that. Again, I like a lot of those Padres getting a lefty, but I also trust the ability for the Padres to put up a 0. I think they have that in them also. All right. And then I think that does it. I mean, are you considering Matt Moore or Yovani Gallardo?
No, not at Camden Yards, not against either of those offenses.
Yeah, I think
the Rays aren't great against righties, but it's Gallardo.
That's the only reason I'd bring it up. Is it's an okay matchup for him, but he still doesn't bring much interest. And Matt Moore has too much blow potential. I mean, I could see a real deep GPP play just because the Orioles strike out plenty and he can get his strikeouts. But there's not a lot of trust there for me either. That's just trying to throw a dart at an unpopular one with a ceiling. The strikeouts give him some potential, but that's real deep. Not a lot of confidence there. We'll take a quick peek at the weekend also. For Saturday, Matt and I, our Field of Streams pick is Kevin Gausman. We feel like is probably the best pitcher that is under-owned, under 50% on there for Saturday. He struggled with righties. The matchup's okay because the Rays struggle against righties, but there's enough right-handed bats that I don't feel great about it, and he's cooled off a bit. But maybe the best option on Saturday. Mike Leake is 49% owned. He goes to Seattle. That's something you could do. But Mike Leake's also terribly boring. Is anything looking at this slate on Saturday? Any names jump out to you that you're interested in watching pitch or trying to go with in DFS?
It's not the most exciting day. The Orioles do have a doubleheader. All 4 of the pitchers involved are fairly interesting. I'll probably take some time to watch a little bit of both games if I have the opportunity. Also want to get eyes on Michael Pineda, who I haven't really watched much this year. Really weird numbers. 5.82 ERA, the xFIP something like 3.39. Huge discrepancy in that. The FIP's like thick high 3s. So he's allowing more home runs than you expect. The BABIP's in like the 380 range. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, and it's hard to get a read on it from just the stat sheet.
Yeah, he's doing the Joe Blanton thing where he's throwing plenty of strikes. He's not walking people, but he's just getting hit.
Strikeout rates above 10 per 9.
Yeah, that looks good, but I get the very elementary takeaway is he's throwing too many strikes. Is that the problem? Who knows?
That's usually the first narrative I look to when someone has numbers like that. He's throwing cookies at some point that are predictable.
Yep. Stephen Wright's pitching on Saturday, and I don't know if he's becoming a must-watch pitcher, but he's becoming a real exciting story. Glad to see him not tailing off. He's now that Rich Hill's on the DL and hopefully coming back soon. But Stephen Wright's one of my favorite ones to watch and follow along while he's going. The Padres also get a lefty again on Saturday. They get Brandon Finnegan, who is a little. He's an okay pitcher, but it's still those Padres I mentioned. They get a lefty. You can consider them again on Saturday. And then if we peek at Sunday, Matt and we're agreeing all weekend. That's really boring in terms of our contest. I feel like he picked first, so I'm copying him, but they're just favorite matchups for us all weekend. Anthony DeSclafani pitches on Sunday, and he gets the Padres. And I'll take any decent righty against the Padres. The lefties scare me a little bit, but DeSclafani, even though it's in Cincinnati, I totally trust him against San Diego. That's where we're going. Similar to Pineda is Nathan Eovaldi getting some strikeouts, but also getting hit around a little bit. Him against the Twins is a little bit interesting. And then Bartolo Colon is slated to go to Atlanta. And you said they've gotten a little bit better, and he wasn't able to, he left it for one pitch or something in his last start. He barely started his last start. But if he's okay, I'm totally fine with that in Atlanta. Not a huge ceiling, but at least should be okay. What sticks out to you for Sunday? Anything on the slate that has your attention?
I want to watch the Jason Hamill, Jose Fernandez game. Like watching Jose Fernandez in general. Not really not unexpected. He's just fun to watch.
Yeah.
And then Clayton Kershaw at night. National game.
Yeah, that'll be definitely good. And then Josh Tomlin opposite Justin Verlander. I think, in the spring you wouldn't have thought much about those two names, but going against each other, they're not quite aces, but they're definitely two quality pitchers making a better matchup than you would have considered. Tomlin opposite Verlander is kind of interesting. So, yeah. Well, that should about do it for us for the Friday show. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. Brad, what have you been doing other than hanging out with other nerd writers in New York? You've been writing anything? I think we should keep
this last week I've mostly been trying to catch up from hanging out with other nerd writers.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about going to New York, I left my computer behind, so it's pretty much, I was hanging out with like 40 baseball nerds at a given time, and I was kind of disconnected from actual baseball at the same time.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff to catch up for there, a lot of articles to cram into the last few days. I'm back to my normal schedule, and now I just have to head to a doctor appointment after this and start rehabbing some things.
Mm-hmm. We forgot to mention up at the top of the show, but Brad, of course, running the Daily Grind Invitational, and we have another one of those up for today. It looks like there's still some room in those entries. So if you were listening to this, checking it out, go get in there. That is on FanDuel today. There's a link in the post. You can also follow Brad on Twitter at BaseballAteam, doing those contests every day. Those been going pretty all right?
Yeah, they've been going well. My only complaint is I'm not winning as much as I'd like to.
Yeah. But that's all Rotographs readers. It's fun interaction there. That's a good way to play with other nerd writers, as we put it. So yeah, check out that link on there. And then, that should do it. Again, follow Brad at BaseballAteam. Writes about DFS, also writes about Dynasty, so both ends of the spectrum, and some in between, for sure. We're getting out of here. Brad, good luck at your doctor's appointment and your rehab, hoping that your pitching shoulder gets straightened out, basically.
Yep. Yeah, hopefully I can get that figured out. And then I got a grade 2 hamstring strain I need to rehab.
Sounds like Brad is day-to-day. A little bit banged out. I am on Twitter at HigginsFOS, and like Brad mentioned, we'd like to hear from you guys. If you want to tweet about DFS questions, if you just want to talk about general baseball stuff, we'd like to hear from you. That should do it. Thanks for listening. I'll be back on Monday with Matt, as always. And until then, good luck with your picks, and have a good weekend.